Hey everybody, it's Andrew here from Go Green Compost.
Hi.
This is Penny, and in this video I'm going to be telling you about one of my favorite plants to grow. It's a great plant for permaculture. If you live in zone 9 like I do, this thing is going to do great. Very easy to grow. It even produces some food for you. It provides a lot of food for your local pollinator population, and you don't really need to fertilize it or do much once it gets established. So it is by far my favorite plant. And in this video, I'm going to tell you all about it, so stick around. It's going to be a great video. Let's get to it. All right, everybody, so the plants I was telling you about in the intro there are pigeon peas, also known as gandules. And you can see I have several of them planted here along my fence line. And right now it's the middle of March, and these are covered in these yellow blossoms. And it's not unusual for me to come out here and see several honeybees or bumblebees just going to work pollinating these. They seem to like the plants quite a bit. So these are definitely a good thing to plant if you want to provide some food and some habitat for your local pollinator population. And also, each one of those blossoms is going to turn into one of these little bean pods. And you can see I've got some forming here. These are just getting started. They're not ready to eat yet. These are just getting started, but in a couple weeks, these will have some nice yummy peas in them. And you can harvest those and eat them fresh. They're pretty good, very refreshing, nice little snack when you're out in the garden. Or you can just let them dry on the bush and harvest them later. And then you gotta shell them. It's a bit of work harvesting all the beans from these things, but the nice thing about pigeon peas is that they don't really require much maintenance once they get established. I pretty much never water these things. They have a nice deep tap root that'll get them all the water they need. And you can see I've got a bee going to work pollinating these things right now. And I mean, every time I come out here this time of year, I see these bees. So I know that the pollinators like these. And pigeon peas should do well in pretty much any tropical or subtropical climate. I know they grow them in the Caribbean. There's a popular dish in Puerto Rico, arroz con gandules. We've actually made that in the past with some gandules from these plants that you're looking at, and it's a pretty tasty dish. They grow them in India too, I believe. Fair amount of subsistence farming goes on with these. And one of the great things about gandules is not only do they produce food, and they don't require much in the way of inputs as far as fertilizer or water, the vegetative material as well, the branches and the leaves, makes great ground cover. You can chop that down and just drop it right below the plants. Now I've got some wood chips from my last chip drop spread around here, but when I do prune these, I do tend to either just throw the branches directly into my compost, or I just leave them on the ground around the plants to form kind of their own mulch, and they definitely build up the soil. The stalks and stems themselves, I know in some places around the world where they use these, they actually use them as a building material. You can see I've pruned these to be a bit taller so that I have access to the ground area. So you can get a nice long straight stalk on these that can be used either as a building material, or it makes great firewood once you dry it out. It's a very versatile plant. Really the great thing is, I mean, here in North Florida, we have very sandy soil. It's not very nutritive. These gandules just do great in it. They don't really require much in the way of soil quality. They should do well pretty much anywhere you plant them. They tolerate a wide variety of soils. They'll even tolerate a little bit of salinity. We're here on Amelia Island, so we probably do have a little bit of salinity in the soil, and it doesn't seem to bother them at all. Now this row of gandules, I did have to water it for the first year. It's been here for about 3 years now, and it's still producing beans pretty strongly. So these are a perennial, which is nice. You plant them once and they're just going to keep producing food for you. For all those reasons, these are pretty much my favorite plant. And I think they make a great plant for anybody who's interested in permaculture, anybody who's trying to get food producing perennial plants, anybody who's trying to get plants that will thrive without too much inputs and too much work. These gandules in my garden bed are looking a little rough. They got beaten up a little bit this winter. It was a little colder than usual, and they are just looking kind of scraggly. You'll notice that these guys don't have any blossoms on them while the other ones do. I used these to provide some shade for this garden bed, and you can use gandules for that. And these I've also pruned to be a little bit on the tall side. So if you want a short, bushy pigeon pea. You can create those as well via pruning. I just wanted something back here that was a little bit taller and that I could put some of those cloth pots at the base of if I wanted to, and that I could just kind of access that area a little more easily. So that's why I've pruned them to be taller. But if you want them shorter for whatever reason, short and bushy, you can get them to be that way too. They will tolerate pruning, and you can kind of shape them up nicely if that's what you'd like to do. I'm actually going to be planting some more of these today. I've got some starts right over here. Some little germinated gandules, and I'm going to go ahead and pop those into these little cardboard planters here in just a minute, fill those up with soil. And then, I don't know, I got to find another spot in the yard. You can see I like gandules a lot. Here's a random gandule. This was actually part of a little garden we had set up for Penny, which we've since moved. But that's her gandule. It also doesn't have blossoms. It's kind of shaded here by all these trees, so I don't think that one's going to be producing any beans anytime soon. But maybe it will. Maybe this little guy will prove me wrong. I don't know. But I'm going to be planting some more around the yard, because the big row that I have, those guys over there, they've been there for about 3 years. From what I've read, gandules will produce from anywhere from 7 to 10 years. So I want to get another successive batch of gandules going so that I don't, have my established ones die off in a couple years and have nothing to replace them. And also what I was thinking of doing is just taking some of these little pots here. I've got some cheap nursery pots in my shed, and I'm just going to plant a bunch of gandules and get them going. And then anybody in my area who's interested in getting started with gardening or permaculture, I'm just going to offer them to them. Be kind of like Johnny Gandule seed and try and spread these things around, because I do think that they're a very useful plant. They're not like self-seeding and invasive and getting all over the place. These, I've never actually had any in my yard grow spontaneously, so I don't think that's much of an issue. But they do provide a nice food source for the local pollinators. The food they produce is fairly tasty, although it's a little bit labor intensive to harvest, but it's not too bad. And yeah, it's just a great plant. Helps you do everything you want to do with permaculture. Helps you improve the soil. They are nitrogen fixing, they're legumes. You can see I have these germinating in a powder, and what that powder is basically an inoculant for legumes to make sure that they have some nitrogen fixing bacteria when they're growing. So these guys, gandules, are my favorite perennial permaculture plant. One of the first things I got started growing when I got interested in gardening. They don't require a lot of care, there's not much to them, and they seem to thrive in a variety of climates. I'm growing them here in North Florida. When I used to live down in Miami, I grew some there and they did really well. So they definitely should do well. I would expect anywhere in Florida and probably anywhere in the southeast or anywhere with a tropical or subtropical climate. So if you're looking for something to add to your yard or your garden or your permacultured property, and you haven't given gandules or pigeon peas a try, that might be something for you to consider. And you can get the seeds and beans for these pretty much anywhere. Pretty sure you can get them at the garden supply store. Also, they sell gandules at your local grocery store too, and you can probably even just sprout some of those and get going with planting those. Shouldn't be a problem. If you guys are going to get started with some gandules, let me know in the comments below. I'd be very interested to see what you guys have to say, or if any of you are already growing them, let me know what your experience has been with them. And if you liked this video and you'd like to see more information about plants and gardening, then check out this video right here. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll catch you next time. Andrew from Go Green Compost out.